She was not stolen by a stranger in the dark. She was taken in broad daylight, from a supervised visitation center, by the one person no one thought to stop, her own mother. A father kissed his 23-month-old daughter on the forehead, told her he would be back soon, and walked to his car. When he returned 90 minutes later, she was gone. No note. No warning. No goodbye. For 25 years, Carlos Reyes Cuverdier searched every city, crossed every border, and released one extra balloon into the sky every single April 19th, her birthday, because letting go was never an option. This is the story of little Andrea Michelle Reyes. And the DNA test that finally answered 25 years of silence. If this story already has you hooked, hit that like button, subscribe to Cold Case Chronicle, and share this video before we go any further. A little girl vanished in 1999. The least she deserves is for the whole world to hear her name. New Haven, Connecticut. October 5, 1999. A Tuesday morning, carrying the first real chill of autumn. Carlos Reyes Cuverdier loaded his daughter into her car seat and drove to the supervised visitation center right on schedule. Andrea Michelle Reyes was 23 months old, 1 month shy of her second birthday. She had dark curly hair, warm brown eyes, and a toothless grin that could light up any room she walked into. That morning she was wearing her favorite yellow sweater, the one with the tiny embroidered ducks along the collar. Carlos had legal custody of Andrea. A Connecticut Superior Court judge had granted him temporary primary custody just weeks before that October morning, following the breakdown of his relationship with Rosa Tenorio, Andrea's mother. The separation had not been quiet or clean. Arguments had grown frequent. Tensions had escalated. By the summer of 1999, both parents were involved in formal court proceedings, and the judge had made his position clear. Carlos would be Andrea's primary home. Rosa would be permitted supervised visitation only, twice a week, at a neutral facility, with a trained supervisor present at all times. The arrangement existed for one reason: to protect a toddler caught in the middle of something she was far too young to understand. On that Tuesday morning, Carlos arrived at 9 a.m. as scheduled. He signed Andrea in, kissed her forehead, and watched through the observation window as the supervisor gently led her to the playroom. Andrea settled quickly. She waved a small hand as her father turned to leave. Carlos walked to his car and drove off to run errands, a grocery stop, a bank run, fully expecting to be back before noon. He returned at 11:45 in the morning. The playroom was empty. The supervisor met him at the door with a grave expression and explained what had happened. Rosa Tenorio had arrived on time that morning. But around 10:30, she had told the supervisor there was a sudden family emergency back in her hometown. She signed the logbook in a hurry. She buckled Andrea into a car seat without protest. The supervisor watched them pull away in Rosa's old blue Honda Civic. Nobody stopped them. Nobody had any reason to. Carlos called Rosa's phone. No answer. He drove directly to her last known address on Dixwell Avenue. The apartment was empty. A fresh for rent sign already hung in the window as though Rosa had planned her exit down to the last detail. He walked into the New Haven Police Department at 12:15 in the afternoon and told them everything. Detective Luis Ramirez took his statement carefully. This was not a miscommunication between two parents. This was not a misunderstanding about pickup times. A mother without custody had taken her daughter during a court-ordered supervised visit and disappeared. It was a direct and deliberate violation of a judge's order. By early afternoon, an Amber Alert had been issued across Connecticut. The alert described Andrea as a Hispanic female toddler, approximately 2 feet tall, dark brown hair in pigtails, last seen wearing a yellow sweater and blue jeans. Her photograph, a recent snapshot from a family gathering, showing her smiling that wide, toothless smile, was broadcast to media outlets and shared with law enforcement agencies across the entire state. The New Haven Register ran the story prominently the following day. federal authorities issued a warrant for Rosa Maria Tenorio's arrest on charges of custodial interference, a felony under Connecticut law. And the FBI's New Haven field office joined the investigation almost immediately, flagging a detail that would define the next 2.5 decades of searching. Rosa had deep family ties to Puebla, Mexico. The possibility of an international abduction was on the table from the very first day. Tips came in quickly in those first weeks. A woman resembling Rosa buying diapers at a Walmart in Bridgeport. A child matching Andrea's description overheard in a Hartford park. Carlos followed every single one personally, driving through the night with printed flyers stacked on his passenger seat, working the phones, showing Andrea's photograph to anyone who would look at it. Every tip dissolved into a dead end. Every resemblance fell apart on closer inspection. Every night he drove home without her. By the end of 1999, the initial surge of law enforcement activity had begun to slow. Investigators shifted toward longer-term strategies, aware that parental abductions frequently involved a child being hidden in plain sight under a new name, a new story, a new life. Carlos Reyes Cuverdier went to sleep every night in an apartment that still held Andrea's crib, her toys arranged neatly on the shelf, her yellow sweater folded on the dresser. He left her room exactly as it was. Every morning he passed the door and paused, as if she might still be inside waiting for him. In the spring of 2000, authorities in Puebla quietly notified Connecticut investigators that Rosa and a young girl had been located in the city. For a moment, it seemed like it might be over. But Mexican officials delivered a verdict that would haunt the case for years to come. Under the treaty between Mexico and the United States at that time, parental abduction was not considered an extraditable offense, not without clear evidence of endangerment, not when the person holding the child was a birth mother. Their hands were legally tied. Andrea was in Mexico, and the law as it stood could not reach her. Carlos did not accept that. He booked a flight and traveled to Puebla himself. He walked the streets of Rosa's old neighborhood for months. He showed Andrea's photograph to shopkeepers, priests, market vendors, and strangers at bus stations. He posted flyers on telephone poles. He visited local prosecutors carrying translated letters from the FBI, requesting any assistance they could offer. He came home empty-handed. He went back the following year. And the year after that. The trips to Mexico became a defining pattern of his life throughout the 2000s. Tijuana in 2004, following a rumor of a border crossing. Guadalajara in 2005, after an American tourist reported seeing Rosa in a public park. Each journey cost him savings and vacation days and quiet pieces of himself that he would never fully recover. But he kept going. In 2006, Carlos married Lucia Rafala, a woman who understood what it meant to carry loss without letting it consume you. She never asked him to stop searching. She traveled with him on some of those trips, walking unfamiliar streets beside him, holding his hand when the silence became too heavy. In 2008, they welcomed a son. Their new home on a different street still held a room set aside for Andrea, untouched, waiting. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children had formally taken Andrea's case in the year 2000, assigning her a case number and producing the first professional missing child poster. Her smiling photograph beside the essential facts: Hispanic female, born April 19, 1997, abducted October 5, 1999. They mailed thousands of copies to police departments, hospitals, truck stops, and community centers across the country. And every few years, they produced updated age progression images, what Andrea might look like at 5, at 8, at 13, at 18. Each new rendering arrived like a quiet, merciless reminder of how much time had slipped by without her. Carlos marked every milestone he could. On April 19, Andrea's birthday, he released balloons, one more each year, each one representing another year of waiting and hoping and refusing to let go. He spoke to local news outlets whenever they called, always steady, always delivering the same message: she is out there, she is safe, and one day she will come home. In 2010, he created a Facebook page called Find Andrea Reyes and began posting weekly stories about her first words, her favorite foods, the way she laughed when tickled. The page grew slowly to thousands of followers, people from Connecticut and across the country and even from Mexico, sharing her story in their own networks. He had also, somewhere in the middle of all of this, become a teacher. A second-grade teacher in New Haven, spending his days caring for other people's children while his own remained unreachable. In 2017, he was named New Haven's Teacher of the Year, a man shaped entirely by love and loss and an absolute refusal to quit. If you are still with me right now, and I know you are, drop the words "I'm still here" in the comments below. Carlos spent 25 years checking every lead and every database and every dark corner of hope he could find. The least we can do is stay with him all the way to the end of this story. By 2021, a new tool had entered the world of cold case investigations, consumer DNA testing and public genealogy databases. Carlos submitted his DNA to GEDmatch. He followed with samples to additional platforms. He checked his email every single day, hoping for a notification that someone, somewhere, shared enough of his genetic markers to point toward Andrea. Months passed. Then another year. Then another. Nothing came back. Then, in 2023, New Haven detective Kealin Nivikoff joined the department's Special Victims Unit and began systematically reviewing older entries in the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, cases from the 1990s that had gone quiet but never been officially closed. Andrea's file stopped her in her tracks. The detailed court records. The international dimension. The father who had never once stopped advocating. Nivikoff took the case forward. She rebuilt the investigation from the ground up. She recontacted retired witnesses. She obtained warrants to examine old social media accounts connected to Rosa. She worked interviews and search warrants and every digital thread she could pull on. Through that painstaking work, she identified a woman living in Puebla, Mexico who she believed could be Andrea Reyes, now a young woman in her mid-20s, working and living her life in the city where she had spent almost her entire existence. Nivikoff partnered with Othram, a forensic laboratory based in Texas that specializes in genetic genealogy for unsolved cases. Othram's Project 525, launched in partnership with the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, exists to bring resolution to 525 juvenile cold cases sitting in the national database. Andrea's would become the 7th confirmed identification in the state of Connecticut. The woman in Puebla provided a DNA sample. It was compared to Carlos's profile using Othram's KIN-SNP rapid relationship testing. The science worked backward through family trees, through distant relatives, through public records and open-source documents, narrowing the search until there was only one answer left. The results came back supporting a father-daughter relationship. The 23-month-old girl who had been buckled into a blue Honda Civic on that Tuesday morning in October 1999 was alive. She was 27 years old. She was living in Puebla, Mexico. And she was Andrea Michelle Reyes. According to reporting from the time of the press conference, Andrea had actually reached out first. After taking a consumer DNA test of her own out of personal curiosity, she received a notification flagging a possible paternal connection to a man in Connecticut. Questions she had carried quietly for years began rising to the surface. She contacted investigators. And the confirmation came swiftly. On March 12, 2025, Carlos Reyes Cuverdier stood at a podium inside the New Haven Police Department and faced a room full of cameras. He was 55 years old. He had spent more than half his life looking for his daughter. Standing beside him were Detective Nivikoff, FBI agents, representatives from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and his wife Lucia, who wept openly as she addressed the media and thanked the detective who had given them back something they thought they might never find. "It was a moment of joy," Carlos said. Then, quietly, "we have some sense of happiness. But the chapter is not closed yet. There are a lot of steps that we have to take. Detective Novikov described what had finally broken the case open. There was not one single piece of evidence, she explained. It was a combination: search warrants, social media, interviews, and ultimately DNA testing through Othram that confirmed who Andrea was. New Haven Police Chief Carl Jacobson added that while cases may have investigative leads exhausted at a given point in time, no cold case is ever truly closed. As of the press conference on March 12, 2025, Carlos and Andrea had spoken by phone and exchanged messages. A private, in-person reunion was being arranged by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, a first meeting between a father and a daughter separated for 25 years, in a place comfortable for both of them, away from cameras and headlines and the weight of a world that had been watching. That moment belongs only to them. Rosa Tenorio's federal arrest warrant remains active. It is valid only within the United States. She is believed to still be living in Mexico, where she cannot be extradited under current treaty agreements. The warrant will follow her name for as long as the law allows. But the little girl she took is no longer missing. She is found. She is well. And she knows now that her father never stopped. 25 years. Countless flights to a foreign city. A classroom full of other people's children. Balloons released into the sky every April 19th. And one DNA test, taken out of personal curiosity by a young woman in Puebla who had always felt something was missing from her story, that confirmed what Carlos Reyes Cuvertier had never allowed himself to stop believing. She was out there. She was safe. And now, after everything, she knows his name. Andrea Michelle Reyes is home. Not yet in the same room. Not yet across a table where they can sit and look each other in the eye for the first time. But found. Known. And loved by a father who never, not for a single day in 25 years, gave up on her. If this story moved you, and I believe it did, share this video right now. Send it to someone who needs to hear it today. Every share keeps Cold Case Chronicle alive, and it keeps cases like Andrea's burning in the public memory where they belong. We will see you on the next one.